told you that struggling to open a stubborn jar in your 60s, or maybe needing to push off the armrest just to get out of a deep couch, isn't actually a sign of natural aging.
Right, it's something people just accept, but they really shouldn't.
Exactly. What if instead those everyday frustrations are symptoms of an undiagnosed, potentially reversible organ failure? Today, we are talking about your muscles.
It's a huge paradigm shift.
It really is. And for you listening, whether you are in your 30s and just wanting to plan ahead, or you're in your 70s actively looking to regain your strength, the research we're diving into today completely rewrites the narrative on physical decline.
Absolutely.
Okay, let's unpack this. The core of today's deep dive is tackling a condition medically known as sarcopenia, which is basically the loss of muscle mass and function as we age. And the most shocking takeaway from our sword stack is that we treat this decline as an inevitable law of physics, like gravity, when we really, really shouldn't.
Yeah, it is a profound misconception. I mean, we culturally accept that passing a certain birthday means your body's just going to deflate.
Right, like it's just baked into the calendar.
Exactly. But while sarcopenia is incredibly common, it is not an unavoidable consequence of getting older. Getting older is a biological certainty, sure, but losing your physical capability at a rapid rate is a physiological choice. Or rather, it's a result of environmental factors we largely control.
So we have a say in the matter.
A massive say. In the vast majority of cases, this decline can be slowed, stopped, and in lots of instances, significantly reversed.
Wow. Okay, so before we get to the blueprint for reversing it, we have to look under the hood. I really want to understand the actual mechanics of this decline. Like, why does the body suddenly start shedding muscle tissue just because you crossed the threshold of 50 or 60 years old?
Well, the decline is driven by a convergence of a few biological shifts. First, we have to look at muscle protein synthesis. Your body is constantly in a state of remodeling.
Breaking down old tissue and building new stuff.
Right. But as we age, the cellular machinery responsible for that building phase simply becomes less sensitive to the signals that tell it to grow. And on top of that, you have a natural drop in anabolic hormones, specifically testosterone and estrogen.
Which act as the directors of that remodeling process, right?
Exactly. They tell the cells what to do, and suddenly there are fewer of them shouting instructions.
I was reading about another major factor in the sources called inflammaging, this chronic low-grade inflammation that sets in over decades. The research showed that as we accumulate visceral fat or deal with chronic stress, our immune system releases these inflammatory cytokines that literally block the muscle-building signals.
Yeah, that is a critical piece of the puzzle. Chronic inflammation creates a really hostile environment for muscle tissue.
So is this like a car engine slowly rusting out, or are we just not putting the right gas in the tank anymore?
Actually, neither analogy quite captures it. If we want a highly accurate way to visualize what is happening, we shouldn't think of it like a rusting car. Think of your muscular system as a massive, intelligent electrical grid for a sprawling city.
Okay, an electrical grid.
Yeah, and the brain is the main power plant. If there are entire neighborhoods representing your muscle fibers that aren't drawing any power because you aren't doing any heavy lifting or strenuous activity, the central power plant doesn't just keep sending electricity there.
Oh, I see. It shuts down the substations.
Exactly. It scales back the infrastructure to conserve energy.
Because the body is too efficient to maintain infrastructure it isn't using. Use it or lose it.
Precisely.
Yeah.
What's fascinating here is that the grid is never permanently destroyed. The sources are unequivocal on this point. Human skeletal muscle retains its plasticity, its ability to adapt until the very end of life.
Wait, really? The very end?
Yes. Now, the speed of the adaptation slows down, of course. A 20-year-old will lay down new muscle fiber much faster than a 75-year-old. But the physiological mechanism itself, it never turns off. We have robust clinical data showing adults in their 80s and 90s making highly meaningful improvements in muscle mass and strength when placed on the correct training protocol.
That is incredibly hopeful, and knowing that the window never actually closes naturally forces us to look at why keeping that muscle is so vital in the first place. I think most people associate building muscle with vanity, trying to look good in a swimsuit.
Right, or maybe basic mechanical independence like carrying groceries or climbing stairs.
Yeah, exactly. But our source material takes a massive left turn here, because everything we just mentioned is strictly physical. The research points out that strong muscles directly dictate the health of our brains. So here's where it gets really interesting. I need to understand the biology of this. How on earth does a bicep or a quad talk to the brain?
Well, we have to completely discard the old medical model of skeletal muscle for this to make sense. For centuries, medicine viewed muscle as dumb mechanical tissue, just meat levers that pull on bones when the brain sends a command.
A very mechanical view.
Very. But the paradigm shift in the last 20 years is the discovery that skeletal muscle is actually an endocrine organ. In fact, it is the largest secretory organ in the human body.
An organ, like the liver or the heart?
Yes. When your muscles contract, when you are actively engaging them against resistance, they synthesize and release specialized signaling proteins called myokines.
The sources compared these myokines to an internal email system.
That is an excellent way to conceptualize it. These myokines are chemical messengers. Once they're squeezed out of the contracting muscle, they travel through your bloodstream and communicate with your liver, your gut, your pancreas, and crucially, your brain.
And they can actually get into the brain.
They're small enough to cross the blood-brain barrier. And once they enter the brain, they do some incredible physiological remodeling. They reduce neuroinflammation, and they stimulate the release of something called brain-derived neurotrophic factor, or BDNF.
Which is essentially miracle grow for the brain, right? I read it promotes the growth of new neurons and synapses, specifically in the hippocampus, which is the memory center.
Yes, BDNF acts as a protective fertilizer for your neurons. So by actively contracting your muscles, you are quite literally bathing your brain in a neuroprotective chemical cocktail.
That is mind-blowing.
It really is. You are sending a biological signal that says, hey, we are still moving through the environment, we are still solving problems, keep the cognitive lights on. That is why viewing muscle as an active organ is so important for you as the listener to internalize today.
Because when you lose muscle mass to sarcopenia, you aren't just losing the ability to lift a heavy dox.
No, you are losing a massive portion of your body's internal communication network. You are shrinking the organ that manufactures the medicine your brain needs to stave off cognitive decline.
Seeing muscle as a vital organ entirely changes the stakes, which brings up, honestly, the most terrifying aspect of sarcopenia. The decline is completely silent. You don't wake up one morning and suddenly realize your muscle organ is failing.
It creeps up on you.
Yeah, the sources list these incredibly subtle, everyday warning signs that society has just trained us to ignore. You find yourself walking a fraction slower than you used to. Your balance feels a little wobbly when you put your pants on in the morning.
Or you notice your grip strength is fading.
Right. Or, most insidiously, you start subconsciously restructuring your life to avoid fatigue. You stop gardening, you take the elevator instead of one flight of stairs, you just start opting out.
And this raises an important question. Why does the medical community often dismiss these symptoms? If a patient goes to their doctor and says, I'm having trouble standing up from my chair, the overwhelming default response is, well, you're 68, that's just normal aging.
Which is crazy when you think about it. We would never accept that answer for a failing kidney.
Or a failing heart, exactly.
Yeah.
We would run diagnostics. Weakness should never be met with complacency. It must be investigated because the root cause is almost always tied to something we can manipulate.
So let's talk about those root causes. If we are ruling out the calendar as the primary culprit, what is actually pulling the strings on this invisible decline?
Well, the single largest driver is chronic disuse, which we will definitely get to. But diagnostically, a physician should be looking for systemic roadblocks first.
Like what?
Is there a severe vitamin D deficiency, which compromises muscle function? Are there unintended side effects from medications like statins or corticosteroids that are accelerating muscle breakdown? Is there underlying insulin resistance?
So you have to identify and treat any hidden biochemical leaks before you can effectively rebuild the structure.
Precisely.
Okay, let's assume you've checked those boxes. You've noticed the slow walking, you've realized you are losing this neuroprotective organ, and your blood work is relatively normal. How do you, the listener, actually rebuild it? Because the immediate reaction for most people who want to get healthier is to just start walking.
Right. They lace up their sneakers and walk for 30 minutes a day.
But the sources are explicit that walking, while fantastic for cardiovascular health, does absolutely nothing to stop sarcopenia.
It doesn't.
Yeah.
Walking keeps the heart healthy and clears the mind, sure, but it is a low-amplitude movement. It only recruits your type 1 muscle fibers, which are the slow-twitch endurance fibers.
And sarcopenia attacks a different type.
Exactly. Sarcopenia disproportionately attacks your type 2 muscle fibers. Those are the fast-twitch, power-generating fibers. Those are the fibers that allow you to catch yourself when you trip on a rug so you don't break your hip.
Ah, I see.
To rebuild those type 2 fibers, walking is entirely insufficient. You must introduce a stressor that forces them to activate, and that means resistance training.
The physiological principle the sources reference here is progressive overload, which just means you have to gradually ask the muscle to do a little bit more work than it is currently capable of doing comfortably.
Yeah, because your body is incredibly thrifty. It will only maintain the exact amount of muscle tissue required to survive your daily routine. If your daily routine consists of sitting at a desk, sitting in a car, and sitting on a couch, your body will rapidly discard your type 2 muscle fibers.
Because they're calorically expensive to maintain.
Exactly. Progressive overload is the deliberate process of sending a localized stress signal that says, our environment has become more difficult, we need more power.
I want to push back on this a bit, or at least voice the massive psychological barrier I know a lot of people face here. When you tell a 65-year-old who is already feeling fragile that they need to start resistance training and progressively overloading their muscles, the image in their head is a sweaty, intimidating gym.
Oh, for sure.
They are picturing heavy iron barbells, chalk, and a super high injury risk. Telling someone with wobbly balance to go lift heavy weights sounds genuinely dangerous.
The idea that resistance training is inherently dangerous for older adults is one of the most damaging public health myths in existence. When tailored to the individual's baseline and progressed gradually, it is profoundly safe.
Safer than not doing it.
Much safer.
Yeah.
In fact, the data clearly shows that not resistance training carries a far higher mortality risk due to frailty and falls. Furthermore, you do not need to step foot in a commercial gym to achieve progressive overload.
So you don't need the barbell.
You don't need the barbell. The muscle fiber doesn't know if you are pushing against a piece of iron, a heavy elastic band, or your own body weight. It only registers the tension.
That makes it so much more accessible.
It really does.
Yeah.
You can achieve highly effective type 2 fiber recruitment using resistance bands right in your living room. You can do modified push-ups against your kitchen counter. You can perform bodyweight squats holding onto a sturdy chair for balance. The mechanism of action is identical. You are safely exposing the tissue to tension to force an adaptation.
And the sources recommend 2 to 3 sessions a week, targeting the major muscle groups like legs, back, chest, and core. And the focus is entirely on the quality of the movement and the tension, not on exhausting yourself. You don't need to leave a puddle of sweat on the floor to trigger the myokines and the growth response.
Exactly. 2 to 3 days of focused, intentional tension. That is the physical blueprint.
But the physical tension is only the work order, right? I was reading the nutritional data in our source stack, and I realized a major assumption I've always had was completely wrong. I just assumed that if you eat a lot of protein, your body will naturally build muscle. But without the resistance training, eating extra protein doesn't build anything, does it?
No, it doesn't. Think of it like this. If you drop a massive pile of lumber and bricks at an empty lot, a house doesn't spontaneously build itself.
You need the architectural plans and the workers.
Right. The resistance training provides the blueprint and signals the workers to show up. Only then does the protein you eat get utilized for muscle repair. If you just eat a high-protein diet while remaining sedentary, your body will simply convert those extra amino acids into glucose for energy or store them as fat. You're just generating expensive waste.
Let's dive into the mechanics of that protein, because the rules change as we age. The sources detail a phenomenon called anabolic resistance, which completely changes how we need to structure our meals.
Anabolic resistance is a defining feature of aging muscle. In your 20s, your muscle cells are hypersensitive to protein. You could eat a tiny amount, say 10 grams in a small cup of yogurt, and your body would immediately flip the switch to build muscle.
But that changes.
It does. As we age, the cellular sensors become blunted. They need a much louder signal, a much larger dose of amino acids at one time to flip that exact same switch.
The research specifically highlights an amino acid called leucine as the critical trigger here. It acts almost like a key and an ignition for the muscle-building pathway, which I think is called mTOR.
Yes, mTOR. Leucine is the master switch. And because of anabolic resistance, an older adult needs a significantly higher amount of leucine in a single meal to start the engine. This means the typical modern dietary pattern is fundamentally broken for aging adults.
How so?
Well, most people have a piece of toast for breakfast, maybe a light salad for lunch, and then they try to cram 60 grams of protein into a massive dinner. That morning toast and afternoon salad do not contain enough leucine to overcome anabolic resistance. So you essentially spent 2/3 of your day in a state of muscle breakdown.
Oh, wow. So you have to hit that leucine threshold multiple times a day, which means restructuring your plate to ensure you are getting 25 to 40 grams of high-quality protein at every single meal.
Every single meal.
Breakfast needs eggs or Greek yogurt. Lunch needs lean poultry, fish, or dense plant proteins like soy or lentils. You have to send that loud chemical signal morning, noon, and night.
Spreading the dose is non-negotiable if you want to rebuild the tissue.
Knowing how hard it is to get that much protein purely from whole foods, I went looking through the source data on supplements. Usually the anti-aging supplement market is full of snake oil and empty promises. I fully expected the research to debunk a bunch of magic powders, but it actually pointed straight back to a staple of the 1990s bodybuilding scene, creatine monohydrate.
Oh yeah, creatine is having a massive evidence-based renaissance in the longevity space right now. It is one of the most rigorously studied supplements in human history.
How does it work for older adults?
Physiologically, creatine is stored in your muscles and acts as a rapid energy reserve. During resistance training, your muscles burn through their primary energy source, ATP, in a matter of seconds. Creatine rapidly recycles that ATP, allowing you to produce just a little more force.
It gives you the energy to do that one extra push-up or pull the resistance band one more time, which creates a better stimulus for the muscle to grow.
Yes. When paired with resistance training, the clinical evidence showing creatine's ability to improve strength, increase lean tissue, and even support cognitive function in older adults is remarkably strong.
The sources also flag vitamin D supplementation, but specifically note that it only provides a muscular benefit if your blood work shows you are clinically deficient.
Right. It's not a magic pill if your levels are fine.
Exactly. The vitamin acts as a hormone that regulates muscle function, so correcting a deficiency is vital. But taking massive doses if your levels are normal won't give you superhuman strength. And of course, anyone listening needs to talk to their physician before adding creatine or anything else, especially if they have underlying kidney issues.
Always consult a doctor first.
So what does this all mean for the final piece of the equation? We have the stimulus, which is the tension from resistance training. We have the raw materials, which is the leucine-rich protein and the creatine. But when does the actual rebuilding happen? Because I noticed a heavy emphasis on sleep in the clinical protocols.
Well, we have to reframe how we view exercise entirely. When you are lifting weights or doing squats, you are not building muscle. You are actively destroying it.
Tearing it down?
Yes, you are creating microscopic tears in the type 2 muscle fibers. You are causing localized inflammation. You actually leave the workout weaker than when you started.
That sounds counterproductive, but I know it's not.
Right. The entirety of the muscle building process, the synthesis of new tissue to repair those micro tears so they come back thicker and stronger, all of that happens during recovery. And the apex of that recovery occurs during deep, slow wave sleep.
I was looking at the endocrinology of sleep in the sources. During those deep sleep cycles, the pituitary gland releases pulses of human growth hormone, or HGH, which stimulates the liver to produce insulin-like growth factor 1. These are the literal architects of tissue repair.
Exactly. If you cut your sleep short, or if your sleep architecture is fragmented by alcohol or stress, you blunt the release of human growth hormone. You leave the micro tears unrepaired.
So you essentially ordered the demolition of the old kitchen and then fired the construction crew before they could install the new cabinets.
That is a perfect way to put it. You are left with systemic inflammation and weakness. High-quality sleep is not a luxury. It is the mandatory environment where the physiological adaptation actually occurs.
This has been such an eye-opening conversation.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the protocol we've pulled from the modern science is deeply empowering. It requires effort, but it's highly accessible.
Let's summarize it.
The blueprint is clear. 2 to 3 days of progressive resistance training to recruit those type 2 fast-twitch fibers and trigger the release of myokines. Redesigning your meals to hit the leucine threshold with adequate protein 3 times a day. And fiercely protecting your sleep architecture to allow human growth hormone to execute the repairs.
And for you listening, remember that this protocol is about compounding physiological interest. You are not going to do 30 minutes of resistance band work on a Tuesday and wake up on Wednesday feeling like an Olympian. The adaptation of the nervous system and the hypertrophy of the muscle fibers takes weeks and months of consistency. Give your body the time to rebuild the grid.
Absolutely. Consistency is everything.
I want to leave you with a final, slightly provocative thought based on the biology we explored today. We spent a lot of time establishing that skeletal muscle isn't just for movement. It's an endocrine organ that releases myokines, like BDNF, which act as essential fertilizer for your brain's memory centers. The brain requires the muscle to contract to get its medicine. Now, look at the physical environment we have built for ourselves over the last 50 years. We are obsessed with engineering physical effort out of our daily lives. We ride electric bikes so we don't have to pedal against the resistance. We use robotic vacuums. We have smart homes where you don't even have to stand up to turn off a light or close a blind. We have drive-throughs and escalators everywhere.
We've engineered out the friction.
Exactly. If our brains literally require the chemical signals generated by our type 2 muscle fibers doing physical work, could it be that by engineering all this convenient, friction-free technology into our lives, we are accidentally starving our brains of the vital medicine they need to stave off cognitive decline?
That is a fascinating way to look at it.
So tomorrow, when you are walking through a building and you see a flight of stairs right next to an escalator, I want you to look at those stairs a little differently. Don't look at them as a mechanical inconvenience. Look at them as brain food. You don't have to just accept the decline. You have the blueprint. It's time to start rebuilding the grid. Keep challenging yourself, and we'll catch you on the next Deep Dive.
If you like this video, please consider subscribing for more content like this.